Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Guiding Lights. This is the new year, and we are excited about all the guests that will be coming to share their journeys with us. I am Alexis Nelson. I am with BEST, which is Be Exceptional Support Together. What we endeavor to do is create awareness for exceptional families and all communities because we want to make sure that everybody is aware. They have access to resources. They are encouraged and inspired and empowered by these awesome stories that we are receiving from some of my guests. So today we have Elena on, and I am so excited. She is the most patient person because she has been patient with me, and I really do appreciate that. So, Elena, can you kind of just introduce who you are and tell us about what you do?
Sure. So, my name is Elena Luna Magallanes. I am a mom and a wife, and I live in Lake County, Indiana. So, definitely involved in quite a bit and wear many different hats within my community. Um, as it relates to professionally, what I do, I work for the Autism Society of Indiana, and I am the Northwest Area Assistant Manager for the region. Our focus is direct care. But because I live and I'm engaged in my community, I sit on a couple different boards. For the city of Hammond, I'm on the Mayor's Commission for Disabilities. For the Diocese of Gary, I sit on the Bishop's um, Council. So I do a little bit of everything, and I'm pretty involved in my kids' school. I have a couple teenagers, so a couple different hats I wear in that arena as well.
Awesome. That's awesome. And that's probably one of my first questions. You're a part of an exceptional community. You
Mhm,
are a service provider
mhm,
for those who are exceptional, and you have all these other hats. How
mhm.
do you do it? Is there a balance, or how do you handle all these different responsibilities and still have your peace?
It is totally God's grace. I definitely don't look at things through the lens of I am doing it. I look at it through the lens that things are being done through me. Um, I'm just connecting the dots, right? Whether it's in my home, whether it's in my community, whether it's in my professional field, um, or wherever I go. It really is the ability to be able to say, I have no control. I have absolutely no control. All I can do is kind of say yes to whatever God puts in front of me. So um, that's it. That's it.
That's awesome because I always say we have to have a a community, and we also
Mhm.
need to get our help from somewhere.
Right.
And for me, that does come from God because I'm
Mhm.
gonna tell you, Elena, this I
Mhm.
remember when my daughter, I noticed something was different.
Mhm.
And I'm a social worker, so I was really super hard on myself. So I'm like, wait a
Mhm.
minute,
Yeah.
why is this different from everything else that I do? This is what
Mhm.
I do these things, but it hit differently
Right.
because it was personal.
Mhm.
And I can remember saying, wait a minute, because I have two other children. And I
Mhm.
said, well, she's not meeting these milestones
Mhm.
and she's not speaking.
Mhm.
So it was about that time to do school.
Right.
And I was terrified. I was like, I cannot send my daughter to school. She can't speak.
Mhm.
How is she going to tell me what happens if something happens? So I had all these different emotions going on. And so I remember one of my sisters, she said, oh, you're going to send her to school. And I'm like, I'm not sending her to school ever. And she's like, no, you're going to send her. It's going to be okay. And I did that, but I found in that moment that my life had changed, and
Mhm.
I needed to educate myself more on what was going on with my daughter
Yeah.
and stop comparing to others.
Mhm.
Because in the beginning, it was like, I remember that first IEP meeting, and I was like, oh my God, this is due
Overwhelming.
soon. I
Yeah.
said, what? What are you saying? And so it was a lot. And I said, I wonder how many parents after me, had to deal with this and didn't have that support and that, that support system. And even those, and then I didn't even know about the resources, Elaine. I was like,
Right.
how did I not know about beads?
Right.
I had no,
Right.
it was like, but I'm in the community and I am a social worker and I don't know about these services. So if I don't know about these services, how many other people in our communities don't know? And that's what I want to kind of talk to you about just the not knowing, the overwhelm, like where do you begin?
Yeah. It was really those were the same exact questions that I asked myself. Um, my son was born really early at 26 weeks, and I was just 19. And so I was like, Lord, what am I doing? What are you doing? So it was definitely a lot, I think, for me at that age to kind of really wrap my head around everything. Um, I was a full time college student at the time and working a full time job. And so this just put everything on hold, right? And so when my son was born, and he's my oldest, and so he was the one who not just turned us into a family, but he also like educated me. My first degree is in criminal justice. So nowhere did I ever think I was going to end up in early intervention services. But as a direct result of trying to be proactive with what we anticipated his life to be, like I educated myself on early intervention services. So, healthy families, parents as teachers, those kinds of programs to help me identify things and support his developmental growth as we both grew into our new roles, right? And so with that coming on board and him being born so early, we jumped right into first steps and had those home visitation programs. But I didn't really look at it. And maybe it was just me being naive, like, oh my gosh, I'm a special needs parent. Like I never really, I don't think embraced that role. I was just looking at myself like a mom. I'm a young mom. I need to learn how to become this parent for this child as opposed to, hanging out with my nieces or my cousins or my friends and their babies, right? So, um, and I think as I got older and as we saw his different needs, I did see that I got myself more and more involved in the special needs community. Not necessarily again with the mindset that I'm a special needs parent, just that I want to try to support him the best way I can. Because I knew his life was going to be different, but I didn't know to what extent. Nobody could tell me to what extent, right? And so we went into the school system and things were okay. He was delayed in reaching his milestones, but not cognitively impaired. So he was speaking, he was, moving at a delayed um, age range, but nonetheless moving forward with reaching his developmental milestones. So there was a good chunk of time that when he was in school, he didn't even have an IEP. He had a 504. Um, and so it was more socially where he was being impacted. And so the struggles that he kind of had in middle school and in high school really focused around the social component. And that's when the IEP came in. That's when we noticed that he needed much more structure, some medication, those kinds of things that needed to be a little bit more intensely um, just kind of tailored to his needs. As a direct result of that, though, I found myself asking myself so many times, my son is not the first one in your school system to need these services. How come you guys don't have any places for me to connect to? Why don't you have someone I can talk to who's been through this or knows of community resources? And by then, I had already kind of gotten my second degree as a paralegal. So research was just right up my right up my alley. And so, come to find that our area really struggled with providing services for our community, especially in the minority communities, right? And so, it was just like, my kid is not the first one with autism. What do you mean? Your school doesn't have a, a classroom, a self contained classroom. What do you mean you don't have a behaviorist for your school system, that we've got to go partner with another school system? So it was understanding the limitations of my community, but also not just settling for not having, um, and being that advocate for him. And so I don't know how I did it. I guess in response to you, I don't know. I just kept asking questions, um,
Mhm.
and when the questions weren't directly connected to a service, I'm like, well, why can't we get that service? How do we find resources to cover that? Whether it's private insurance, whether it's public um, insurance or public funding sources. How do we make it happen so that when someone else comes to this part of their journey, they're able to have a little bit more peace in knowing they don't have to dig as much. And that's how I came across the Autism Society of Indiana, too.
See, and that's good. You said something about a 504, and
Mhm.
and then you said an IEP. Can you kind of go into detail the difference between the two?
Sure. The 504 is typically providing services or accommodations within a school setting that aren't necessarily changing the curriculum, right? It's just the added support. So it could just be something as simple as extra time for any kinds of service within the classroom. The IEP is an actual individualized education plan that is the legal contract that the school has to provide specific education services for a child. And so it's based on the needs of the child, and so it really just it can be individualized. But in theory, it can be individualized because it's very much a cookie cutter, a cookie cutter systemic type of plan, educational plan.
That's something that you said that today I had a IEP meeting. Well,
Mhm,
it wouldn't be an IEP because she's homeschooled, so it's
mhm.
a um, uh, IES. I think they said independent individual education service plan because she's
That's the service plan. Mhm,
homeschooled. And so I was wondering how were they going to utilize these tests that they use to try to figure out what's going on, and things like that.
mhm,
And so, and I had a in-depth conversation with the providers. I said, I was really wondering how you were going to get what you needed to be able to evaluate. And it was interesting because one of the psychologists was like, well, we can't say it's this because we don't know what she can understand. So would the primary be autism,
mhm,
or would it be speech and language
mhm.
delay? And so, because at first it was receptive and expressive and receptive,
Expressive. Mhm,
and but I know that she understands. So she can understand commands and things like that, and she understands what we're saying. So they were like, "Well, we don't want to say was it because of this or was it because of that." So I said, "Well, my goodness, if the providers are, trying to go," I'm like, "My goodness." But I thank God because I kind of know how my daughter is, whether with the test or without the test. So
right.
I was like, okay, so these are the things that we're currently doing, and we'll continue to do the things that we were doing. But I did appreciate the fact that they really took the time to try to figure out, like, okay, we can't use this test because this is not going to work for her. This is
Mhm,
not cookie cutter because she's not going to have a dialogue with you back and forth in the way that we may be speaking now. However, she does communicate. She does not communicate in the what we call the way that we communicate.
yeah, the
And so,
traditional. Mhm.
And so it was really interesting to see that, and just even still learning about the services that's available to our communities. I think about my own daughter, but I think about the community,
Mhm.
because I know how hard it is when you don't have access to resources. I know how frustrating it become when you tried this and you tried that, or the waiting list is long, it's forever and amen. You can't get in, but they're telling you your child needs this, but there's a waiting list. And
Mhm.
there's, so many different factors that play into providing those services. So where's the support for the parent?
You have to find your own village. That's just the reality of it. Um, in an ideal world, I think it would be great to say that the care team of providers is your village, and that's a good starting point, right? That's a good starting point. Um, but it is also important to know that as a parent, individually, aside from your parent role, you still need support, right? And so, connecting with other families or other parents who are kind of going through the same journey, um, not necessarily the same exact diagnosis or anything like that, but have experience in walking that journey, share in those types of intense frustrations because those are pretty intense. um, but it also really kind of helps in being able to have your own individual time to process and throw ideas around and throw some, even if it's just questions that don't have answers, just like, how do I find this? Or does this thing even exist? And has anybody tried doing it like this? And if they did, what was their result? Those kinds of things. Um, but it is important to find that village and that tribe. Um, for
So
me,
true.
yeah, for me, it was my faith-based community. My church has really been, it's where my kids go to school, went to school. And so we had parents who may not have shared the same journey in regards to special needs, but because my son did have such high demands for my attention, I was able to build a community with the parents of the friends of my other children. And so if both girls had soccer and they were on different soccer teams, I knew moms who were taking their kids to both, right? And so we would carpool, or they would carpool, or I would be the one to take the girls to the game. With my son, if for whatever reason, when it was a school dance or anything like that, it was an opportunity for me to have that outlet with those parents, and it all just happened to be we were all part of the same faith-based community. So it really helped with the clarity of mind, for me, um, to be able to kind of continue to connect the dots, because just because I'm a professional in this field doesn't mean that things have still been any smoother for my adult son.
That's, and when you talk about the community of the church, that I'm telling you, it makes a whole lot of difference. I have someone every time I have to minister, she's
Mm-hmm.
there,
Mm-hmm.
because everyone can't keep my daughter. So I had to train, people had to learn how to, work with
Right.
her. And so I'm so grateful to that. So I can go and I can minister, and I don't have to worry about, is my
Right.
daughter okay? And I love that about my church, and just the support. I mean, not even outside of the church,
Mm-hmm.
you still need that. You need those people. I can remember, I call her, I said, my sister cousin. She's my cousin, but she's like a sister. So my sister
Right.
cousin, she always
Right.
she's always
Right.
there, and she's a OT. She happens to be a OT too. And so she
Mm-hmm.
really helped out a lot with,
Yeah.
the journey. And I really appreciate that. I think back, I'm like, man, if I didn't have my tribe, I
Right.
don't know what. And my number one tribe member is the God.
Oh, of course. Of
And
course.
so
Of
Jesus has
course.
kept me. He and I just cling to that. He'll never
Mhm.
leave us. He'll never forsake us.
Mhm.
And so, and he is a present help. So in those times when I'm
Mhm.
frustrated, or those times where I feel like, did I mess this up? Because as parents, whether you have an exceptional child or not, if you have not had that question to yourself, tell me what tell me what's the secret? Because
Right, right. No, 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 no. I definitely have embraced the mindset that God does not prepare those he has called. He no wait, how did that go? He does not call those who are prepared. He prepares those who are called. So life has definitely been preparing me for this journey, this part of that journey. And so um when my son, there was a time when he was in middle school where he would like elope. He would just get so frustrated and just take off. My church group would just, we had a group text, and I was like, all right, guys, Antonio took off. I don't know, left or right. My neighbors would text me back and saying, oh, he's sitting on my front porch having some lemonade. We caught him. We're talking with him. He's fine. And then he would go like 3 or 4 blocks down, and the neighbors from the church down there would message me. He's sitting on our porch. He's petting the dog. And so it really did help us really kind of grow roots in this community, right?
and that is so awesome when you said it. I'm thinking about all the different
Mm-hmm.
experiences, because the community is so important that they are aware, because
Yes.
especially the community that you are a part of. I
Yeah.
can remember my daughter, it was busy, and she elopes. And
Mm-hmm.
so I turn around, I'm like, where is she? Because I'm
Mm-hmm.
always on alert, but I left her with
Right.
someone else for just
Right.
5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and that small time frame,
Mm-hmm.
she was able to get out the house, and
Mm-hmm.
she just walked down the street, and I said, "Oh my gosh." And then my little teenage neighbor down the street was like, "Don't worry about it, Miss Nelson. I have her." And
Mm-hmm.
my heart was just like, because
Yeah.
I was like, because she was young.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to those community members that step up. It does
Yes.
take a village, and I appreciate the village.
Oh yeah.
And
It
you
really does.
know,
We had a situation in which it was raining. Antonio had gotten, I don't even know how he had gotten into an argument with someone um, who didn't really understand. He was trying to buy some lemonade or something, some details, and it was raining out. And so he took off, and his worker didn't know where he was at. So his worker calls me and is freaking out, of course. Oh my gosh, I lost your son. He took off. And that person was not from our community. So, of course, call the police, let them know my son's missing. And they called me right back and they said, he is at the front of the church sitting with a police officer. They said the police officer's name, and they're like, she recognized him, she knew him. So she just sat with him and is talking with him. And I was like, oh, Lord, thank you.
he's so good. He's so mindful, and he always is there for us, protecting our babies. And I
Yeah,
tell you, it's
yeah.
it's it's a scary feeling, you know. I know, like you said, everyone has different abilities, and
Hmm.
and I know our experiences are different. But one thing is that we must know that flexibility,
Hmm.
being prepared for the unknown,
Oh, yeah.
because it can just change in a moment,
Hmm.
and really educating others who are going to be a part of our lives, because
For sure.
I can remember, and this is why I really want uh businesses to be aware as well, because sometimes the sensory challenges that some of our kids may have, and adults, it's not acknowledged. So
Hmm.
or we may have different, like the movie theater. I talk about this all the time because it really burned me up at the time. I was
Hmm.
just like, this is so bad. I know that they have sensory friendly movies, but that one they did not deem to be sensory friendly. And I want to take my daughter because I know she loved music. So it was
Hmm.
Annie. Annie came out.
Oh.
And she at that time, her words, she really wasn't saying, she would just hum the tune and things
Hmm.
like that. And so she's enjoying it. However, the person behind me had an issue with it.
Mm.
And so they said something to the worker, and the worker, instead of just coming up to me, she's like pacing back and forth, staring. And I'm like, I'm looking, I can see that what she's doing. And I kind of
Mhm.
had an idea. I'm like, let's see how this is going to go. So she
Mhm.
comes and she asks me, can I leave? Mind you, I have a daughter that elopes,
Right.
and I have to be with her at all times. And
Right.
I didn't really want to remove her because she was having a good time. And
Right.
so I just, my kids were with her. So I've trained them to, they know. And
Mhm.
so I stepped out for a quick moment, and she was saying, well, could you like, in so many words, leave?
Mhm.
I said, what? you know, and I
Mhm.
thank God for the fruit of the spirit, because
Self-control.
yes, the fruit of the spirit, that self-control, because I was so heated, because I said, so I just paid for to come to this movie and you're saying I have to leave? Are you kidding me?
Mhm.
I said, okay, so, and then she says, oh, I have a friend that has autism. I was like, and who told you and how are you, and you don't do that,
Yeah.
right? It's like, who does that? So I'm like, so what
Yeah.
would you like me to do? I said,
Mhm.
"Oh, you want me to leave after I paid my money?" And I came early where there was hardly anyone in the theater.
Mhm.
And I said, "I need to speak to someone, because not because I
Mhm.
wanna get you in trouble, but I
Mhm.
wanna educate you all."
Yeah.
How,
Most
you know,
definitely. Most
it's more
definitely.
it's more about the education for me, because if you did it to me, I'm
Mhm.
sure you will do it to someone else. And you may
Yes.
not have the same reaction, because we're very sensitive in our communities.
Mhm.
And we have to be protective, because
Right.
sometimes people are not so kind,
Mhm.
and and may not understand certain
Right.
things that our kids may do. And so I was so thrown back. Like I said, I thank God for the fruit,
Mhm.
because that was a perfect opportunity, but I kept my flesh under control, and just
I think there's so many situations that um, we've definitely have been a part of, but that we've also walked in on and helping guide those conversations. Um, we had down by us, we have a um, festival of the lakes, and we have a special needs day. And on that particular day, it's a sensory friendly day. So for a couple hours, we allow the city invites individuals of all abilities to come totally free. They get to get on the rides, they get a free meal, but the lights are turned down. There's no like crazy lights. The sounds are supposed to be down. Um, and in this particular instance, the carnival people were just blaring the music, and we were like, "It's sensory friendly day." Like music, that sound, that's a sensory.
Mhm.
And so we had to gather the team together, the carnival people, and really just kind of educate them on what to do in case there's a meltdown. What does a meltdown look like? How do we support the parent or the caregiver in those moments, and how do we help prevent them? Because it's not like there was the same amount of people that there would be if it was open to the entire general public, right? So um, it's just been so many different opportunities
Right.
that we kind of use as teachable moments, right?
Yes, and we just have to keep doing that,
Yeah.
because it's
Hmm.
I was we had another young lady on the show, and she was saying how they have the changing tables, but
Yeah.
you never think of, if you have an adult that you have to put on
Right.
a changing table, you
That
know
is so
things
true.
like that we don't think of,
Hmm.
and it's just the continued conversations, like you said,
Hmm. Yeah,
having
and
those
I think that
conversations.
there's so many there's a lot of willingness within our community, but there's also a lot of um, man-made obstacles, right? And so I know that as long as the providers and the community stakeholders are willing to learn to do things differently and they're open to do that, then we're definitely headed in the right direction, right? It's just really unfortunate when we do see a lot more um, red tape and bureaucratic process just kind of hindering the growth that the community is ready to kind of step into.
Yeah, and that's sad
Hmm.
because I tell you, I this summer I'm trying to do a walk called "Don't Stare, Just Care."
Hmm.
And it's so more than just like you staring at people, but for me it's like you just, we have to do, we have to
Hmm.
have a doing grace when it comes to all abilities.
Hmm.
And in order for us to move and to have that grace, we have to continue to have the conversations. We have to have advocates such as yourself and people that's on the journey to say, you know what, for those who are not aware that this does impact our families.
Hmm.
This does. And we are just as much a part of the community
Oh
as
yeah.
everyone else. And I
Yeah.
know we hear about inclusivity and all that, and that's nice. The words are great. Um, However, in some cases, that's just not the case. And
Right.
so, as long as we continue to do the work, and I know we had the disability fair, and I was talking about, wow, we need to figure out a way to get more people to come. So, if they're not coming to us, what do we do? How do we bring the information to help educate families, to support families, to guide them, to connect them with other like minds that can
Hmm.
help encourage them and maybe be a part of their tribe?
Hmm.
Because I'm meeting new people and I'm like, I'm so glad I met, I'm so glad I met you.
Hmm.
I'm so glad I met other people that's on a journey because it's inspiring. And we all have children at different ages,
Hmm.
you
Different
know,
phases of the journey. Yeah, for sure.
right. And that's even more, I had a young lady and she was saying, okay, I didn't know I had to have guardianship of my own child. What
Hmm.
does that, and so even knowing things like that, preparing for things such as that. And so
Yeah, we
it's
haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg because we're looking at least for me, I'm thinking future planning. Like, what is my son going to do when I'm not around? How do I start putting those integral pieces in place for him? And how do I trust these people and these agencies to be able to provide for his well being when there is a well established experience of them not? And so, yeah, you're looking at so many more phases to our journey for sure.
the unknown. I think about that now. I mean, my daughter's a teenager, and I was saying, what do they have in the in between stage before? So you have these services that help, when they're the toddler stage up until maybe 12, and then you have this teenage, this space right here. Where does she fit? What can she be involved in? And so I was just like, wow. I said, and pretty soon she'll be a young adult. So what does that look like? Do we have all the services in place? If anything ever was to happen to us, who would step in? How would this look? And these are questions that we have to have, and they're hard questions sometimes because just the thought, I want my daughter to always be loved, always be
Hmm.
taken care of, never have to worry about being mistreated,
Hmm.
because we do hear stories where people put their kids in these places and they're not always treated well, and may not have the advocacy that others may have. And so we definitely have to, like I said, it can be like, oh my gosh, this is coming soon. And it happens before you know it.
Yeah,
Before
and
you
even when you're going through it, like I myself, we partnered with a residential agency, and they became my son's landlord and provided residential services for him. He is on the community integration habilitation waiver. But even with that in place, and I'm an engaged parent. Like we helped train the providers in regards to mental health stuff. We helped educate them on Antonio's daily routine, and stuff still happens. And I'm like, Lord, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Like, is it for me to look at this and be like, oh no, or is it for me to look at this and just be like, okay, no, come back,
Yeah.
come back, because we're navigating a course of what I may want for him and what he may want for his life,
Hmm.
right? And so that may not look the same in 100% of the areas, right? And
Right.
so his version of independence, we want to support that, but we also want to protect him. And so how do we support and protect without um, sacrificing the process, right?
Right.
The learning process is totally
Yeah.
different. Totally
Yeah.
different.
It's hard. I tell people I don't care what services is provided and who's in
Mhm.
my daughter's life. I'm going to be forever a mom.
Oh yeah,
And
totally.
as Mama Bear, I am there. I am
Mhm.
protecting. I'm saying, hey, wait a minute. This looks a little, mm-mm, you
Mhm.
know, but I want her to still get everything she needs. And I
Mhm.
don't want to interfere with the process. And
Right.
so it's trying to still say, okay, I'm gonna let you as much as I can.
Right.
But it's challenging, you
Right.
know. I have been
Mhm.
through so many different therapists.
Mhm.
I through the beads. I have beads, but I also have
Mhm.
outside. She's been with her
Mhm.
one therapist since she was just a little girl, and
Mhm.
now it's time to like do. She has to transition, and
Right.
I am not ready. I'm just like I am not ready for this. This is who
Yeah.
they. She knows. They know her. She knows
Right.
them. This is working for me, but
Right.
she's growing up,
Yeah.
and I
And
have
the
to.
reality is that there is such a turnaround really in the field, that there is a skill set that they learn by becoming by transitioning between different therapists, right? It's that flexibility of adapting to a different style, um, but not everybody's ready for it, for sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
it and trying to get to know. I was just working with someone. Now this is an adult. He had if he didn't have the support and someone to walk with him through the process of getting the bead services, trying to choose. It was amazing. They put this packet in front of him and said, pick a provider, and he's looking like what?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm looking at all these different, you know, providers. And I said, well, how would he know what,
Hmm.
you know, because at the time they were saying, well, we can't really tell you what to pick.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, okay. And so even having the language to say, okay, so how often do many people pick this one? I'm not telling you to tell me what to pick, but what is
Hmm.
the one that is most frequently you see that
Hmm.
people use? And so I in that moment I was saying, how do one expect for someone who really cognitively may not understand? I
Right.
mean, they understand some things, but you know, how do you make that process for them and still empower them so they
Hmm.
can know that yes, you're still an individual. You still can do some things for yourself without pulling it like, okay, now I have to fill out this whole application because he's looking
Right.
like it's like, what is that?
Right.
You know,
Right.
even making that process a little
Right.
more, I guess, I don't know what to say, more just
It's almost like there's a crucial role that I think is missing when we talk about all these services for our loved ones, and it's the self advocacy component of it, right? Because when they start the IEP process, seldomly do They ask the individual their thoughts on those services that they have deemed that the team has decided that these are the services that the student needs. Seldomly do they ask the student to be a part of the process. This process is being done to them, right? And the same thing kind of happens along the lines when it comes to service providers, like the process and the therapy, it's happening to them. They have a provider giving them a treatment plan. They have the provider who is telling them what the next steps should be, um, but not really embracing the role of self advocate. Like, okay, yes, this is what the assessment showed. Something as simple as where do you want to start first, um, to help them become a part of the process, to teach them. So by the time they get to beads or they get to voc rehab, they have the confidence and they have the ability to play whatever role they choose to play in that process.
Yes, and I'm noticing that more often. My daughter decides she wants to come and join. No,
Hi.
say hi, Z. Say hi.
Hi.
And so it is. I'm glad you mentioned that self advocacy because I really in that moment I kind of felt like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
how does that feel not to be able to have a voice,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And that's what it was. It's like, and then he turns to me and says, "So what does that mean?
Right.
How do I know?" And so I'm communicating even when I go into other establishments with some of the people that I work with. They may address me and not
Mhm.
address.
Right.
And I'm like, that's not okay. So we're going to
Right.
address, I need you to count it and put it in his hand, the money.
Right.
And I
Right.
don't, I don't
Right.
care if he can count past 29. I still want you to
Right.
put it in his hand. And I
Right.
want you to allow him to have a choice,
Yes.
allow him to have a voice.
Right.
And, and I know we have to teach people and train people because they just assume they can't. Um,
Right.
even
Yeah.
with my daughter, I'm like, you can talk to her. She
Mm-hmm.
understands you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to like,
Mm-hmm.
she's
And
not
it's
an athlete.
something as simple as like when I go out with my son, I make it a point to let him even walk in front of me as opposed to walking behind me. And it could be something as simple as grocery shopping. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you got your list. You know what you're going to be making for the week. You start grabbing your stuff. I'm going to grab my stuff. You grab your stuff. We'll meet up over here. Um, you
That's
know,
good.
and it took us some time to get to that point and a lot of I'm walking out. I can't get what I want, or I have to stick to the list, or I don't have enough money. But it took us some time to get there, but it helps him become a little bit more comfortable with knowing that the decisions are not being made for him, they're being made with him. And so
Yes.
there's a difference for
It
sure.
really is. And and even as parents, sometimes we have to be mindful of that. I'm so used to doing so much and doing everything I have to let her do,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
Something as
and
simple as
so
washing the dish.
yes, exactly. And she does it
Yeah,
all. And
yeah.
even and Myers is like the like a field trip for my daughter because she
Oh, yeah.
loves it. And so
Mhm,
because she knows exactly what type of food she likes. So she
mhm,
will go right to that aisle and she'll put it in the buggy and
mhm,
and she enjoys that. And
mhm,
it also, like you said, it lets her know that I can do some things on my own too.
mhm. Yeah, there's actually, you mentioned Meyer. In Valpo has a little shop in there called the Soapbox. And those are individuals of all abilities who make the products there and they sell them there. And so there's a couple of them there that are nonverbal. Some of them use sign language. Some of them are on the spectrum, and so it's really good to see representation for themselves, right? And so
Yes, yes,
um,
absolutely.
yeah,
That is wonderful. And things like that needs to be, I think that should be highlighted so people can
Oh, yeah.
see, there's ways that you can include and be inclusive,
Mhm.
and not as you're looking like, oh, we gotta help. No,
Mm-mm.
their strength, they have their these. I tell you, I have learned so much from my child.
Mhm.
Just even patience.
Yeah.
She's taught me a lot of that,
Mhm.
and just taught me not to assume. All
Oh, yeah.
because it looks a way doesn't mean it is a way.
Mhm.
And reminded me of that one scripture, call those things that are not as though you want them to be.
Yes.
And that's what we have to do, and
Yeah.
that's what I continue to do.
Mhm.
And I encourage others out there, and I know we are at the top of the hour and we have to end because I
Yes.
can talk to you for quite some time, and we will have to connect again because I don't want this to be
Yes.
the last time that you come on,
Mhm.
because I think conversations like these are needed, and we
Mhm.
have much more that we can talk about. But I
Oh,
truly
yeah.
appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey, and just helping us all out, because you are a part of my tribe now. And
Aw.
so, and I appreciate it, because we need resources and their strength and stories. So I really
Yes.
thank you. I really do appreciate you taking the time out,
Mhm.
especially with all the technical difficulties.
No worries. Thank you for
So,
having us, and thank you for being that voice in the community.
um,
I really do think that there is a lot of value in our stories, and the more we connect, the more we're able to really kind of continue to be that light for others. But thank you so much. I look forward to our next talk.
yes, me too. And it will be coming soon. So, again, all those who are out there watching, make sure you like and share. This
Yeah.
was some very, very, very good information. We had this awesome guest, Elena, on with us, and she will be back. I hope she come back. You know,
Yes.
to,
Let me
to
know when.
share more, and just to this is a support, just viewing and listening, this is support, and I'm sure it's encouraging someone out there, those who may think that they can't do it, or there's not resources out there or other organizations that is inclusive. Today you have learned that that is not so, and so I am so grateful for that. So again, this is Guiding Lights. Thank you for joining us. We are on Mondays at 7 p.m. And again, like and share. And if you are out there and you have an exceptional story and you are on the journey, or you are someone in the community that serves our community, please make sure you reach out to me. You can go to bestsupport.org. And I look forward to hearing from you. And thank you again. And you all have a very, very good day.
Adios.